Okay, so Brooking, can you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, my name is Brooking Gatewood, and um, who I am, like what I do for work.
Yeah.
I'm a consultant contractor. I have a couple of different lines of work. One is I'm an associate with Groupaya and doing more and more work in the organizational realm. And I also work with an online learning and training company, building a sustainability and CSR program for them, and occasionally do other small contract gigs. And all of my work is helping organizations do good better, essentially.
And why did you decide to do Changemaker Bootcamp?
Um, I'm really interested in training opportunities in the realm of facilitation within a business context. And I have done a lot of facilitation and group process work outside of the formal organizational realm the last few years. And I feel like I'm coming back into that realm and just wanting opportunities to brush up my skills and make sure I'm in the right sort of cultural and language framework for working in the business and organizational world. So that was one of my primary drivers, is just to get a flavor of um, that world again, and both from the participants and from the way that you approached. I'm not going to use the word teaching, but leading the boot camp.
And so how was the experience for you?
It was, I don't know, I should have thought in advance because it is a little hard to put words around. Um, there's it was, I think it was my first experience of being in a community of practice, and having worked in this arena before, I know the phrase and the idea of community of practice, but I think it was my first explicit that's what this is sort of experience. And so there was a lot of feeling a little unsettled and confused as to what is practice as compared to teaching and learning framework.
Mm.
And yeah, so there's a lot of sort of observing my own experience and wanting more data to understand how this boot camp and this approach to practice would compare to other, practice experiences for this kind of work. Um, I enjoyed the opportunity to interact with the other participants for sure. I enjoyed just like all the learning that comes from witnessing how you approached it. And that's sort of it's a subtle thing in a way, but I feel like that's valuable information that I'll take with me. And I might not realize the value right away, but over the next few years, it's like, oh, okay, well, I saw Eugene do it that way in this experience. And so I feel like it's that kind of experience where in the moment it often felt like we were doing something really simple.
Mm.
And then in the aftermath, I might find that some of the nuggets really will stick with me in a different way than a classroom experience might have.
Hmm.
So I'm actually really curious to see how I feel about it in a year. I don't, I don't know. I have that feeling that it's going to be one of those sorts of things that has a longer term realization of the value kind of curve.
Now we'll have to do another one of these in a year then. See
Yeah,
what your answer is. Compare
that
the
would be
two.
interesting. Yeah.
Um, what would you say was your biggest kind of content takeaway from the whole experience?
Hmm. So we did power, we did difficult conversations. Could you help me jog my own memory?
Yeah, we did. So you did a kind of a self workout. We always do the questions, the 100 questions exercise at
Oh
first.
yeah.
We did with you and Dana. We did the person on the street exercise. We did synthesis for everyone else. Let's see. So that's one, two. Power was three. Week four was designing collaborative engagements.
Hmm.
Five was difficult conversations, and then six was basically the assessments.
Cool. Okay, I actually think the 100 question thing, I would say like take home value for me by far was the motivation to do my project. And the 100 question thing was, at some level a very simple exercise, but it really spurred something that was a big creative spark in the project that I'm working on.
Mm.
And though it did not come into the actual boot camp, 2 hour periods that much, I feel like the value of having sort of lit the fire under my butt, so to speak, to do that project and to really like keep it moving forward was really valuable. And I really liked the 100 question exercise. And I also really appreciated the Power Week. And just the value there, the learning there was the deep remembering of how many different frames that people have about power in any given room and how important those assumptions are that people bring to the table about power dynamics and rank and equity and all those things. So that was nice to experience and remember. And then in the difficult conversations week, that was great practice. Like that's a perfect example of the value of practice over theory. Is like, you can read all you want about how to give feedback, but you got to just try it and do it. And having a safe space to play with it, that was valuable.
Great. What do you think could have been better?
Well, that's an interesting one because, again, there's a part of me that wants to have all sorts of different experiences of what a community of practice is.
Hmm.
And so I have my ideas, and then maybe it's a different thing, right? But I do think maybe a little bit more of a sense of framework sometimes for any given exercise could have increased the sense of like potency of the value. Um, and what else? I really liked the water cooler function and how that helped keep the group moving, and the commitment to writing something, anything every week, like that kept it alive in the mind and kept us each engaged with at least sharing little bits and pieces. Um, yeah, I don't know how to describe it. It's like I felt like there could have been like more of like a meaty intensity to the experience, and a little bit more. We have this precious 2 hours with this group of people, and almost like a little tighter packing of the plan for what we do together, even though often it seems like we're doing too much. So maybe that was a matter of facilitating time a little bit more vigilantly. Um, and maybe, yeah, like guiding the group in a more sort of firm way in general to ensure that we have the richest, most valuable 2 hours that we can. I think that would be like the theme for me is wanting a little more intensity and like pop in the actual 2 hours of boot camp experience. Would have felt like something I would have been more of a absolutely, I will pay significantly for this experience. Does that make sense?
So I think the latter part I can understand what you're saying. The first thing you mentioned was framework, a little bit more framework. Could you say more about what you mean by that?
Yeah, and I think they're actually related. I think I kind of got to a better way of describing it by the end of that ramble. But I think what I was trying to say with framework is, I think it felt like you had a style that very much had the underlying philosophy of we're learning from each other,
Hmm.
and there's a strength in that, and I think the weakness in that is not offering us enough of your experience as part of our value as participants, and really like there's plenty of teaching moments that I think we all wanted, where you would choose to just facilitate, and that might just be a choice point for you, but to be really explicit about that in the beginning, and this is my approach, or to consider like I actually have real like content value to offer. I can do a 5-10 minute talk at the beginning before the exercise so they feel a little more grounded in what we're doing, and have it's like give people a couple of tools to work with, and they can still like feel like they're really practicing something new in the sandbox, but they've got some more tools
Hmm.
rather than being in the sandbox and not having any tools, and trying to figure out what to do in the sandbox.
Okay.
So I think that's what I mean by framework is just a little more help so that we can have a more a more creative practice experience.
Okay. Okay. Um, how would you, having gone through the experience, how would you describe Changemaker Bootcamp to other people?
I would say it's sort of like a slower pace group process boot camp. Like, I love the word boot camp, but the one thing that feels misleading to me about it is the intensity.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you've ever done physical training boot camps, but it's like there are no breaks, it's intervals, it's like jam packed so that in 1 hour you really have this intense experience. And I was expecting maybe a little bit more of that than I experienced. So there's something about it's kind of like it's a great laid back opportunity for people to who haven't done facilitation work at all, I think, to really develop confidence. Like, I think it's a really great experience for people who are in that position. And for people who have a little more experience, I have the question of how could we create more value um, for for that period, for that time. Um, but yeah, it's a nice like warm up refresher course to all the sort of basic fundamental building blocks of what it is to think about group process and facilitation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you do it again?
Maybe. um, yeah, I was listening to someone else's exit interview, and they said they would maybe do it again under under certain conditions, and I feel like um, there's a bunch of different models you can use in terms of pricing and how it works, and the 6 week intensive boot camp for the amount of money I offered to pay, I would not do again unless it was more tightly facilitated, so that I know that every experience is really going to push me and really going to have a lot of value in that short period of time. I would do a longer, differently framed, ongoing practice experience for the same price. Um, I think there's a lot of different models you could use, but it felt like the 6 weeks, or what for me was 4 weeks, right? Which might be part of my frame.
Mm.
Um, at at that cost point and at the um, level of value I feel like I got, I probably would choose not to do it again if that was the standalone experience. But I'm not sure. And like I said, I also have this hunch that I might feel differently about it and value it more over time.
Okay. Okay. Would you recommend to others?
Yeah, and I think I would in particular recommend it to people who are looking to learn more about facilitation and doing group work, and to think about a lot of these concepts, and that people that haven't worked with them much. I think it'd be a very valuable introduction for that kind of group.
What would you say to them if you had a friend who you thought should participate? Um, what would you tell them?
Yeah, I'd probably say, this is a nice way to get a sense of the different things to think about as a facilitator, and you get to practice the skills. It's a really safe environment. There's no mistakes, there's no right or wrong, and you'll meet some good people and might make some good connections that'll be useful down the road, and it'd be a great way for you to see if this is something you're into, and to get a little bit of practice working on um, especially if they have a project that's relevant too. I think that helps, and to be continuing working with a particular project as they go that they know they want to be working with. So sort of both of those variables, I think, are the things that would make me recommend it to someone.
Okay. Um, do you have any final thoughts? Anything about the whole experience you'd like to share that you haven't had a chance to say?
Hmm. Yeah, and I think it's just that I appreciate your vision, and I appreciate um, there is a gap. There is a lack of training and practice and community for this kind of work, and I think um, it's a really great niche that you're putting this energy into creating. And I'm also like I'm interested in being helpful and part of. So it's like the rest of the conversation to me is a dialogue, and maybe it's off the video, but I really do appreciate what you're doing, and I'm a huge fan of the idea and refining it in any which way, in any way I can be helpful in supporting that. And so I hope you hear this. My feedback is I'm very pro boot camp, and um, and I have a curiosity about what the next level might look like and what you're thinking and where you want it to go.
Yeah, we'll
So
definitely have a
I
good
think that's
conversation about that. And I definitely appreciate the feedback that you've been giving. It's some of the themes that you've brought up, as you point out, some of them kind of been lightly been mentioned by other participants. Some of the things that you're bringing up are a little bit more deeply embedded things that I've been kind of grappling with. So I think this is great feedback for me, and have a good follow-up conversation. But that'll be off video and maybe on the
all right.
water cooler and other places.
Okay.
So thanks, Brooking. Really appreciate the time.
hmm
Okay, bye.